access.
Protecting women's rights in sports bathrooms and prisons. Deep Dive podcast show. Let's dive in. In the heart of this nation, under skies so blue, there's a spirit that's stirring values, strong and true. From the mountains to the prairies, from the cities to the sea, we stand for liberty, for faith and family. We're diving deep into the heart of what we believe. Conservative values in our souls, they're in a we.
So how does a 71-year-old man dying of like a pretty standard heart attack instantly become this massive global assassination plot involving the Kremlin, the FBI, and Iranian operatives?
Well, it happens fast.
Mm-hmm.
Because in our current media ecosystem, a sudden event paired with a really vague official statement, it basically acts like a vacuum.
Right.
And human nature, especially online human nature, it just rushes in to fill that vacuum with whatever narrative feels the most compelling at the time.
Yeah, and today for this deep dive, we're looking at an event that started as just regular breaking news, and within hours it mutated into this sprawling geopolitical mystery.
Absolutely.
We are unpacking the sudden, highly publicized death of Republican Senator Lindsey Graham in Washington, D.C., which happened on July 11, 2026. And the crucial detail here, like the spark that ignited everything, is that this happened literally just hours after he returned from a high-stakes trip to Ukraine.
Yeah, the timing was wild. And to navigate the sheer volume of speculation that's generated, we're pulling from a really fascinating stack of sources today.
We've got a lot to get through.
We do. First, we have this extensive analysis from the Hungarian Conservative that maps out all the international state actor theories surrounding the event.
Right.
And second, we're looking at a piece from the alternative news site modernity.news, which rigorously tracks the intense domestic skepticism, the real-time internet sleuthing that just exploded the second the news broke.
It is an absolute labyrinth of a story. But a quick note before we really jump in here. We are navigating a maze of highly partisan, politically charged theories today from a lot of different perspectives.
Very charged.
Yeah. So our job isn't to take a side or endorse any of these claims. We're just here to impartially unpack what the source material is saying, laying out the architecture of these theories so you, the listener, can see the full picture of how this information spreads so quickly.
Exactly. Our mission is to dissect the official facts of the senator's death, trace the explosion of theories it generated, and really help you understand the underlying anatomy of a modern geopolitical mystery.
Like, why do we do this?
Right. We want to explore the mechanisms of why people reject really simple explanations in favor of these incredibly complex conspiracies.
And to do that, we have to establish the official baseline first. Let's lay out the timeline as it was initially presented to the public.
Go for it.
So, Senator Graham returns to Washington, D.C. from a highly active trip to Kiev. Not long after he gets back, emergency personnel are called to his Capitol Hill home.
Right.
The dispatch report notes he's suffering from chest pains, he goes into cardiac arrest, and he passes away. His colleague, Senator Tim Scott, publicly comments shortly after that it appeared to be a massive heart attack.
And look, on a purely physiological level, a 71-year-old man suffering a fatal cardiac event right after a grueling transatlantic flight from an active war zone, that is a completely plausible, medically sound scenario.
It makes total sense.
It does. The stress of travel, altitude changes, just the underlying pressure of the job itself. All of these are super well-documented triggers for sudden cardiac arrest.
Okay, but let's unpack this for a second, because people do just have heart attacks. It's statistically the most likely cause of death in that demographic.
Exactly.
So why did the internet almost universally reject the simplest, most scientifically probable explanation?
Well, it comes down to cognitive dissonance. It was caused by two conflicting pieces of information hitting the public at the same time.
Okay, what were they?
On one hand, you have the phrasing used by his office, and on the other, you have the visual evidence from literally the day prior.
Oh.
The official statement released by Senator Graham's office, they didn't say he died of a heart attack. They said he passed away from a, quote, brief and sudden illness.
Brief and sudden illness. It's a bit like calling a sudden catastrophic car crash a brief deceleration issue.
That is a perfect way to put it.
It's so heavily sanitized. It's deliberately scrubbed of any medical reality, and that vagueness naturally forces the public to narrow their eyes and start looking for hidden meanings.
And institutional PR speak almost always backfires in a crisis for this exact reason.
Yeah, people hate it.
They do. When institutions use vague language to protect privacy or just to avoid panic, the public instantly interprets it as obfuscation, like they're hiding something.
Which brings us to the photos.
Right. The modernity.news source points out the specific visual evidence that turned this initial skepticism into a total wildfire. Just 24 hours before this supposed brief illness, there was a massive flood of media featuring Senator Graham in Ukraine.
He looked totally fine.
He was on the ground inspecting a drone manufacturing facility. He was in these high-level meetings with President Volodymyr Zelensky. He was smiling, physically active. He was projecting an image of absolute vitality.
The juxtaposition is incredibly jarring for just a casual news consumer. You are processing this vibrant, energetic image of a powerful man in a war zone on Friday, and then you are handed a vague clinical statement of a brief illness resulting in death on Saturday. The human brain really struggles to reconcile those two realities.
It does. And this wasn't just like anonymous internet sleuths noticing the discrepancy either. Former President Donald Trump, who actually ordered U.S. flags lowered in Graham's honor, he publicly commented on their final interaction.
What did he say?
He noted that they spoke on a phone right after Graham returned from Ukraine. According to Trump, Graham sounded tired, which, by the way, aligns perfectly with the physical toll of a transatlantic trip.
Right, who wouldn't be tired?
Exactly. But Trump said he seemed otherwise completely lucid and well.
So the public is staring at all this visual and anecdotal evidence of health violently colliding with the reality of his sudden death.
Yes.
And because the official statement used that evasive language instead of just saying massive coronary event, the ecosystem basically decided to throw the official narrative completely out the window.
And once the simplest explanation is discarded, the human brain automatically searches for agency. If it wasn't natural, someone caused it.
Which naturally pivots the conversation to the most obvious suspect on the geopolitical board. I mean, if we're looking for a culprit with the means, motive, and opportunity to eliminate Lindsey Graham, we have to look at the nation he spent years aggressively antagonizing.
Oh, absolutely. The motive regarding the Kremlin is vast.
It really is.
As the Hungarian conservative piece details, Lindsey Graham was arguably one of the most hawkish members of the Republican Party when it came to Russia. He served in the House starting in 1995, moved to the Senate in 2003, and was a former Air Force lawyer and colonel.
Had a long history there.
He was an incredibly influential advocate for projecting American military power, expanding NATO, and relentlessly harming Ukraine.
And he wasn't just giving, standard political speeches either. He actively pushed for tougher sanctions, for international war crimes accountability against Russian leadership, and for supplying heavy, long-range weapons to Kiev.
Right.
I mean, in 2022, he went as far as going on television and suggesting that someone inside Russia should physically remove President Vladimir Putin from power.
Yeah, that kind of rhetoric crosses a line from political opposition to a perceived existential threat. Russia officially placed Senator Graham on a wanted list in 2023.
Wow.
And by 2024, they escalated that by adding him to their official state register of terrorists and extremists. Prominent Russian ideologists had publicly called for his elimination.
They did not like him.
Not at all. When the news of his death broke, several Kremlin-linked commentators openly mocked him and celebrated his passing on state television. He was a deeply hated figure in Moscow.
Yeah, I saw the commentary from Igor Eidman on this, and it felt like something straight out of a Cold War spy novel.
It really did.
He was pushing this theory that Graham was poisoned, which gained massive traction online.
Yeah, Eidman, who is an exiled Russian sociologist and opposition commentator, he claimed there was a very high probability that Kremlin intelligence services orchestrated the death.
How would they even do that?
His theory hinged on a delayed action poison administered while Graham was on the ground in Ukraine.
Which is terrifying to think about.
It is. And it resonates because it fits a heavily documented historical pattern of Russian state assassinations, using untraceable or delayed toxins to maintain plausible deniability.
It makes a certain kind of dark, cinematic sense, right? You slip something into a coffee in Kyiv, the senator flies home, and toxin just mimics a heart attack in Washington.
Exactly. The historical precedent makes it totally believable to the public. However, The Hungarian conservative notes that Eidman cited 0 intelligence sources.
Oh, really? None.
None. No witnesses and no forensic evidence.
Yeah.
It was pure deduction based entirely on Russia having the motive and the historical playbook.
But like poisoning requires close quarters access, which is incredibly difficult with a U.S. senator flanked by security in a war zone.
Right. Getting that close is tough.
So for the online sleuths who couldn't buy the logistics of a stealthy poisoning, they pivoted to a much louder kinetic theory. I'm talking about the missile strike narrative.
Ah, yes. This was heavily circulated on X, notably amplified by a news page called Russia News. They ran headlines questioning if Moscow had outright eliminated Graham using military force.
Their claim was that Russian military strikes had destroyed the exact drone facility Graham had just toured, the Skyfall facility.
Or, in a parallel theory, that they hit a Kyiv hotel where Graham was supposedly holding meetings with senior NATO commanders.
Okay, so the underlying premise of this theory is that Graham was caught in one of these physical military strikes, severely injured or killed on Ukrainian soil, and that his subsequent death back in D.C. was an elaborate state-sponsored cover-up masked as a medical illness.
That's the idea, yeah.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because I have to push back hard on the sheer logistics of this.
Let's hear it.
If a sitting U.S. senator is killed or mortally wounded in a Russian missile strike in Kyiv, how on earth does he end up having a reported cardiac arrest in his home on Capitol Hill, surrounded by local D.C. paramedics?
It sounds absurd when you say it out loud.
Does this theory just completely wave away the impossibility of secretly transporting a critically wounded VIP across the Atlantic Ocean without a single leak?
You're hitting on the core mechanism of conspiracy logic here. There is this intense friction between physical reality and narrative velocity.
Narrative velocity.
Yeah, like how fast a compelling story spreads. In the ecosystem of breaking news speculation, logistical impossibilities are not seen as flaws in the theory. They are viewed as proof of the cover-up sophistication.
Wait, so the harder it is to pull off, the more they believe it.
Exactly. The logic assumes that if the U.S. government is powerful enough to fake a heart attack to avoid World War III, they're certainly powerful enough to commandeer a flight and silence local medical staff.
The rationale being that acknowledging a Russian strike on a U.S. senator would force Article 5 and trigger a global war, so the U.S. just had to cover it up.
Precisely. The incredibly high stakes justify the complexity of the cover-up in the minds of the theorists. Furthermore, the Hungarian conservative points out that the timeline of these alleged Russian strikes conflicts entirely with the officially confirmed timeline of Graham's visit.
They don't even line up.
No. And the alleged destruction of that Skyfall drone facility hasn't even been independently verified by satellite imagery.
Yet the rumor was moving so fast and gaining so much international traction that it demanded a real-world geopolitical response.
It did. The noise reached such a fever pitch that a Russian lawmaker, Alexei Chepa, was actually forced to issue a formal denial to the press, completely rejecting any suggestions that Moscow was involved in the senator's death.
Which, ironically, is like the worst thing you can do when dealing with online sleuths.
Oh, totally.
The moment an adversary officially denies something, the internet treats it as absolute confirmation that they did it.
It's a catch-22.
But the speculation didn't just stop at the Kremlin's walls. The ambiguity of the situation acted like a magnet, pulling domestic agencies and other foreign actors into this web.
Right. Following the senator's death, the FBI got involved, and Director Kash Patel released a public statement. He announced that the FBI was assisting local authorities and made every necessary resource available.
Okay, but on the surface, if a high-profile political figure dies in the Capitol, the feds offering local police some resources sounds like pretty standard interagency cooperation.
It does, but we have to look at the PR vacuum again.
Yeah.
Think of an information vacuum like a pressurized airplane cabin suddenly losing air.
Okay.
People panic, and they grab for whatever narrative oxygen mask drops first, even if it's filled with toxic information. Patel's statement was a classic PR vacuum.
Because he didn't give any details.
Exactly. He did not explicitly mention foul play, nor did he clarify if the Bureau was conducting a criminal investigation or just offering logistical support.
The Daily Beast called this intervention eyebrow-raising, because that lack of clarity, just refusing to definitively categorize it as a crime scene or a medical emergency, it just threw gasoline on the online speculation.
Yeah, people are asking, if it's truly just a natural heart attack, why is the director of the FBI issuing public statements about dedicating federal resources?
It signals to the skeptical public that there is way more going on behind the scenes.
And right into that void stepped activist Laura Loomer, who urged her massive following to investigate a completely different foreign adversary.
Iran.
Yes. She connected Graham's death to a recent geopolitical event involving the Iranian leadership.
Which event was that?
She pointed to the mourning period surrounding the recent funeral of Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi and events tied to Supreme Leader Khamenei.
Oh, right.
During these state events in Tehran, members of the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and state organizers were actively calling for the assassination of several American figures.
And Graham was on that list.
He was. They specifically named Donald Trump, Laura Loomer herself, and Senator Lindsey Graham.
I mean, Graham had been a massive proponent of applying maximum pressure on Iran. He frequently advocated for military strikes against Iranian infrastructure.
So Loomer's theory leverages that documented hostility, combined with the fact that Russia had recently sent a delegation to Tehran, which strengthened the Moscow-Tehran alliance.
Okay, I see where this is going.
She posited a scenario where an Iranian operative, perhaps emboldened by their growing alliance with Russia and utilizing the chaos of the Ukraine trip, executed a strike.
This is how complex the web gets. You have the Russian poison theory, the Russian kinetic strike theory, the Iranian operative theory, and then we get to the purely domestic paranoia.
Right, which relies on a psychological phenomenon that drives so much of our modern internet culture.
You're talking about the Mitch McConnell connection?
I am. It's a textbook example of apophenia.
Yes, apophenia. For those listening, that's the human tendency to perceive meaningful connections between entirely unrelated things.
Exactly.
The Modernity.News source highlights a commentator named Nick Sorter, who pointed out what he saw as a highly suspicious, completely domestic coincidence.
Sorter noted that just recently, there had been a 911 dispatch call for a severe cardiac arrest at the Washington, D.C. home of Senator Mitch McConnell.
Right.
And following that call, McConnell hadn't been seen publicly.
So Sorter's argument weaves these two isolated medical events together. You have two incredibly powerful, aging Republican senators, both of whom have controlled massive levers of government for decades, both experiencing sudden, severe cardiac events at their D.C. homes within a very short time frame.
It's a striking visual when you put it like that.
It is. To Sorter and his followers, the statistical probability of that happening naturally is so low that it transcends coincidence and points to a domestic purge.
But this is where apophenia kicks into overdrive. You see, evolutionary biology wired our brains to seek patterns just to survive. If you hear rustling in the grass, you assume it's a predator.
Better safe than sorry.
Exactly. But in a digital age overflowing with data points, that pattern-seeking mechanism misfires constantly. We connect a 911 call across town to a senator's death after a flight from Kyiv, and suddenly we have a grand, unified theory of domestic assassination.
And Sorter used this perceived pattern to demand a fully transparent public autopsy for Senator Graham.
He did. But there is a massive legal and personal roadblock to getting that autopsy, which naturally only fuels the cover-up narrative further.
Right, because Senator Graham was a lifelong bachelor. He was never married and had no children.
Which complicates things immensely.
As Sorter and other commentators pointed out, in the absence of an immediate next of kin, it becomes legally and procedurally murky regarding who exactly possesses the authority to authorize a comprehensive autopsy.
And more importantly, who can authorize the release of those medical records to the general public?
Which means the one thing that could actually definitively solve the puzzle, the hard medical science, the toxicology report, the coroner's exact findings, might remain sealed away in a government filing cabinet indefinitely due to basic privacy laws.
Let's elevate this for a second and look at the broader implications here. This entire saga with Senator Graham serves as a masterclass in the mechanics of the modern information ecosystem.
It really does.
We are living in an era defined by a profound, calcified lack of institutional trust. When a sudden, shocking event involves a polarizing figure, the public no longer waits for an evening news anchor to synthesize the facts.
Oh, no. They open social media, they pull up public flight logs, they analyze satellite imagery, they scrutinize 24-hour-old photos for signs of illness, and they just crowdsource a narrative in real time.
And when official institutions provide a statement that feels even slightly inadequate or sanitized like brief and sudden illness, it is no longer dismissed as just poor corporate communication.
People don't give them the benefit of the doubt anymore.
Not at all.
Yeah.
In today's climate, inadequate communication is actively interpreted as hostile deception. The vacuum of verified forensic data is instantly filled by historical grievances, partisan suspicions, and massive geopolitical anxieties.
Think about how you consume breaking news. because this deep dive isn't just a story about the logistics of how one senator from South Carolina died.
It's bigger than that.
It's a mirror held up to how we all process reality. It shows how vulnerable we are to cognitive dissonance and how easily we connect dots that might not actually belong on the same page.
It's a profound challenge to our critical thinking. Skepticism is a vital tool for any informed citizen. You absolutely should question vague narratives.
Of course.
But when skepticism calcifies into a default belief that every single official statement is a coordinated lie, society loses the ability to agree on basic, shared reality.
We just end up living in entirely different worlds. I mean, look at what we've unpacked today.
But
A massively powerful, deeply polarizing politician dies under abrupt circumstances. He leaves behind a vague official statement, a geopolitical tinderbox with adversarial nations that openly wished for his demise, and a digitally connected populace fully equipped to investigate every shadow.
it is the absolute perfect recipe for an enduring mystery, completely regardless of what the biological reality of his death actually was.
So, what does this all mean for us? Where do we go from here when the next major news event drops?
Well, I want to leave you with a thought experiment that cuts to the core of this entire phenomenon.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's assume the legal hurdles regarding his estate are cleared. Let's imagine that 6 months from now, a completely comprehensive, independent, fully public autopsy and toxicology report is released by the most respected medical professionals in the world.
Okay.
And let's say that report proves, definitively, with undeniable scientific rigor, that Lindsey Graham simply died of a natural stress-induced heart attack.
The simplest, most statistically probable explanation.
Exactly. My question is, in today's hyper-skeptical, algorithmically driven ecosystem, would the public actually believe the science? Or have our demand for complex, cinematic conspiracies permanently outgrown our capacity to accept a simple, boring fact?
It's almost as if we've become so convinced that the information cabin is depressurized, we'd rather choke on a toxic narrative than just breathe the plain truth.
Wow.
Something to mull over the next time you find yourself scrolling through the chaos of breaking news. Keep your critical thinking sharp and beware of the patterns you think you see.
Make it make sense. Deep dive podcast show. Let's dive in the heart of this nation, under skies so blue, there's a spirit that's stirring, values strong and true. From the mountains to the prairies, from the cities to the sea, we stand for liberty, for faith and family. We're diving